All right, Akim. Shalom. Shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to give all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rakak Kwadash, that honors the apostles and elders, great millstone, for teaching us his truth. Salutations to the sincere Akim and Aqua that may listen. May the blessing of election be upon your house. My name is Brother Raquai. I'm back here with another quick, the Lord's will as always, an edifying lesson, Yahweh willing, Yahweh Ratazah. And for today's lesson, I just want to, on the title I have on the screen here, it says Intrinsic Worth, right? So, I was listening to one of the, a lesson that was done by one of the brothers out in Montreal, shalom to you. And I was just meditating on it, and I thought it was a very interesting points. And I was also watching this other video on YouTube as well, where it talks about essentially people who have a lot of carnal riches in this world, like so-called like Elon Musk and Warren Buffett and all these people, they dress and have a very essentially a modest way of dressing, a very humble way of dressing, so to speak, right? And I thought it was very interesting. The video also explained, um, it caused them to essentially kind of not display their wealth, but also the importance of working on the internal, right? So that's what I wanted to kind of get into and kind of also add into what the brother was actually talking about, investing in the internal, right? So that's essentially what this truth really first and foremost does. It forces us to essentially constantly work on the internal rather than be ostentatious, like very showy, very, come off very essentially, what's the word I'm looking for? Very showy, displaying large amounts of wealth and so on and so forth, right? Because, when you look at, like, for example, Yahushua was in, like it says in Philippians. As a matter of fact, let me get that. Let me just start off with that. 1 second. Okay. I'll start at verse 5. The point is in 8. It says, I'll start at verse 3. It says, let nothing, okay, so Philippians 2 and 3, and it says, let nothing be done through strife or vainglory, but lowliness of mind. Let each esteem other better than himself. So we're not in a very proud mindset. Look not every man on his own things, but every man also on the things of others. Let this mind be in you, which was also in Mashiach Yahushai, who, being formed of the Most High Yahweh, thought it not robbery to be equal with the Most High Yahweh, but made himself of no reputation, and took upon the form of a servant, that was made in the likeness of men. Right? So, Salakia. And being found in the fashion of man, he humbled himself, became obedient unto death, even the death of the cross. Right? So didn't essentially exalt himself. Is that parable with the Pharisee and I think the despised publican? One was boasting in all the things that they can do, and then the publican, he was very, very contrite. You see the difference in the mindsets between the two individuals when you read Luke. I think that's Luke the 18th chapter. So, anyways, not to go too off topic, I just wanted to touch on that really quickly. But the importance of intrinsic wealth. So let me just, for brothers who want to check out the video. Okay, this is the lesson I was watching. So like here, I was watching yesterday, and I just, I was, I was at work and I thought, you know what, I kind of want to add to this because I thought it was very, very important since Drake doesn't actually invest in essentially the internal, right? So they don't invest in actually in things that's going to properly make themselves more whole, right? And really and truly, that really first and foremost starts with Yahweh Bashem Shai. Let's just make that very clear, right? That's what heals you, and that's what actually continues to keep the fire going, keep you well watered, let me start with, this is one of my favorites. Just bear with me on this. So, okay, kind of going, Salakia, let me define the word. I don't know if I got the definition for the word, but intrinsic. So we have an idea of what is being, said here. Okay, so intrinsic in the etymology, it says interior, inward. It says in Latin, intrinsicus, interior, internal, on the inside, within, along, inside, okay? To follow. So essentially, the worth, is on the inside. It's not displayed on the outside. And that's something that a lot of our people like to do, because essentially what's happening, they're actually really and truly poor on the inside, right? So that's why there is a constant need to, and also it's cultural too in the society, when they listen to a lot of the music, it pushes that vibration of always constantly displaying your wealth in front of other people, especially in front of your own people, right? So they brag about a lot of things such as, lots of cars, lots of women, going to bed on, big stacks of cash and so on and so forth, lots of, jewelry and so on and so forth, rather than actually working on the internal things and actually would make them more wholesome, right? So, let me go to the precept. This is one of my favorites. Okay, so this is Isaiah 55, verse 1, and it says this: Ho, everyone that thirsteth, come ye to the waters, and he that hath no money, come ye buy and eat. Yea, come buy wine and milk without money and without price. Wherefore, verse 2, wherefore do ye spend money for which is not bread, and your labor for that which satisfieth not? Hearken diligently unto me, right? So it says, hearken diligently unto the Lord Yahweh Bashem Shai, right? That's what actually is going to keep us, fed. That's what keeps us spiritually fed. And that's why I wanted to bring this out. So you can see here, when we go out, for example, we go out on highways and byways and teach and so on and so forth, this is, us, presenting essentially a spiritual buffet of all, fancy meats, all these different delicacies that can actually use, and you can implement these particular things, into your walk, into your life, right? So you become more cleaned up in the internal, right? It keeps the, it's kind of like, for example, it's kind of like if you have a blot on a garment and you're trying to, you need something to take it off, and you're using the word to take it off, and keep yourself spotless, keep yourself more holy, so on and so forth, right? It keeps yourself more wholesome, right? So I'll read verse 2 again, and it says, wherefore do ye spend money for which is not bread, and your labor which satisfieth not? Hearken diligently unto me, and eat ye that which is good, and let your soul delight yourself in fatness, right? So that's the contrast here, because our people don't have a soul that is that's delighting itself in fatness. The soul, their soul is delighting itself in skinniness. It's empty, it's dry. You can see it in their countenance. You can see it in their eyes. You can see it in the way they conduct themselves. The scriptures say also that a man shall be known by his walk, right? It changes the way that he conducts himself, so to speak. Not walking physically, but how essentially you carry yourself, right? People notice these things, right? The way you speak, the way you converse with other people, the way you conduct yourselves, because our people don't have a rich connection with the Heavenly Father through His Son Yahushua, right? Another point I also want to touch on here as well, because in the same precept here, it also says that why spend money for which is not bread, right? So Jake essentially likes to, and I was guilty of this in the world, they spend money on things that's not going to profit them and not going to satiate them. So, for example, one of the examples the brother brought up was, for example, they would rather spend and go into and buy, what is it, like shoes, they might go, like for me, for example, when I was in the world, I went to university, and one of the things I noticed, it just, for brothers who can attest to this as well, when you go into a lot of these school systems, it doesn't enrich you like the word enriches you, right? The scriptures say that let the words of a Mashiach, Yahushua, dwell within you richly, and it was, it just wasn't, it just wasn't in tune with you, it wasn't satiating you, when you eat a nice meal, it feels satiated. It's essentially, like one of my elders likes to say, it calls it empty calories. It's not something that's satisfying, your spirit, and that's something that Jake lacks. They spend, we go to a lot of these fancy institutions like Harvard and Yale, or, here in Canada you have, UFT, so on and so forth. You go to these institutions and you spend lots of money, right? They work hard to get these good grades, and they realize they're still lost, because it doesn't give you an understanding of who you are as a people and how it can enrich your spirit. And that's what Jake lacks today, and you can see it in their countenance, like I said earlier, right? There was another point I was going to make, but I forgot it. Lord will comes back to me. Okay, con. So let's move on. Let's get. It's okay. 2 Corinthians 7 verse 31, and it says. I'm reading the NLT. It says, "Those who use the things of the world should not become attached to them, for this world will, as we know it, will soon pass away." Right? That's true. We use the things of the world, but we don't essentially abuse the things of the world, right? And Jake, takes those things, for example, like money, for example, and they, push and strongly hold on to a lot of these things in the world, right? And all these things, as a matter of fact, will pass away, right? These things don't actually, provide, I don't know if satiation, but it don't actually satisfy, you Israelites and your spirit, right? So, and that's also cultural, that's the kind of nonsense that Esau pushes upon our people, because he owns a lot of these record companies, and then our people make music about a lot of these things, degeneracy, things that don't actually would enrich you and enrich your people. Even the kind of content that is made in the music, so to speak, and influences our people to invest in these things that actually don't actually enrich them. It actually makes them more and more of degeneracy. And he understands this. He understands your enemies, right? That's why the first precept I brought up was so important, because not only being so nigh unto Yahweh Bashem Yahshua, you understand your enemy, and then you also understand, as a matter of fact, another precept is just coming to mind. It also makes you understand that, okay, how your enemy fights, right? So that's part of also the enrichment and also part of the investment. Okay, so if you understand who you are, you understand how your enemy fights. Sorry, you understand who you are, and then you understand who your enemy is first, and then you understand how your enemy fights. So, for example, like Esau, he uses these different clever tactics. He's very clever with his words. That's also part of the enrichment. Also part of in developing your intrinsic worth, right? So, where is it? Okay, Baruch chapter 4, verse 1, and it says, this is the book of the commandments of the Most High Yahweh, and the law that endureth forever. All that keep it shall come to life, excuse me, but such as leave it shall die. Turn thee, O Jacob. So, Jacob's name was changed to Israel, so you Israelites, and take hold of it, and walk in the presence of the light thereof, and that thou mayest be illuminated, right? So, essentially what happens, we're illuminated in righteousness, not like, these elites are illuminated, right? So, that's the point I also wanted to make in regards to understanding our enemies, because these enemies research us, they study us, right? That's part of, the intrinsic worth, and, it's more to it, what I'm trying to say, but part of it is, via this truth, you understand who you are, then you understand your enemies, and then you understand how to, be more essentially virtuous. You work on the internal things. You don't focus heavy on the external things, right? So, let me get... Okay, this is one of my favorites. Hold on. Okay, this is Genesis chapter 41, verse 39, and it says, Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, Since the Most High Yahweh has revealed the meaning of the dreams to you, in the NLT I'm reading, by the way, clearly no one is as intelligent or as wise as you are. You will be in charge of my court, and all my people will take orders from you. Only I, sitting on my throne, will have a rank higher than yours. Pharaoh said to Joseph, I hereby put you in charge of the entire land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh removed his signet ring from his hand and placed it on Joseph's finger, and dressed him in fine linen and clothing, and hung a gold chain around his neck. And he had Joseph ride on the chariot reserved for his second in command, and wherever Joseph went, the command was shouted, Kneel down. So Pharaoh put Joseph in charge of all of Egypt. And one of the reasons I wanted to read this, because Joseph, he was able to actually break down the Pharaoh's dream, give them an action plan on what to do, right? So he had intelligence. That's something that is within. That is not something you can't essentially display intelligence on the outside. That is not something that's tangible, so to speak, is what I'm trying to say. Because the Lord was with Yahweh Bashem Shai was with Joseph to be able to do these particular things. And then essentially what happens is, by the Pharaoh giving him the ring and the nice linen clothing, what happens? That essentially the spiritual began to manifest on the physical, right? So you saw it in his, the way he was dressed, the way he carried himself, because he did carry himself with a sense of integrity, right? And walking in the light. Because for example, when you go through his story, when the Pharaoh's wife hit on him, he understood that, oh, okay, this is wrong. This is not something for me to do, right? So Joseph was a kind of character, he possessed virtue. He possessed these things. He had intrinsic worth about himself, right? And this is our history. And that's one of the reasons why the first precept is so, it's so heavy and it's so important, Let me I'll just get one more, but hopefully this is all adding together and making sense. Like for myself, I like doing a lot of research in regards to the history of the Dark Ages, so expanding my knowledge on that. And then for different brothers, they have different talents and different things, right? So that also adds to the intrinsic worth, right? The scriptures say that let your speech be seasoned with salt, right? So the salt is something that essentially gives flavor, right? And because when you talk to a lot of these people in the world, they don't really know much about, well, anything, to be honest with you, right? Where was I going? Oh, okay. Okay, this is 2 Peter's 1 verse 5, and it says, besides all this, give all diligence and add unto your faith virtue, and to virtue knowledge, and to knowledge temperance, and to temperance patience, and to patience godliness, to godliness brotherly kindness, and to brotherly kindness charity. So all these things, these virtues, we add on to these things. These are not some things that is tangible. These are things that you use, and then you can be put in different situations. As I'm learning, like right now, the Lord will put us in situations to be able to exercise, to apply Yahushua and apply Him to be able to, acquire these virtues, to work more on these virtues, to kind of sharpen, to make you more in His image, right? Not for us to conform to Esau's image, right? So, anyways, because we're not degenerates, or we're not niggas, we're Israelites, right? So, anyways, I just thought I would bring out a couple precepts and add, to what our brother was speaking on. But I sincerely pray and hope that this lesson was edifying. Just knowing these stories as well, it also, helps to, build our confidence and so on and so forth, because we're remembering the ways of our forefathers, so to speak. And that also takes a hit when it comes to Jake's intrinsic worth, because when they look at TV, when they look at, media, they don't really see themselves in a degenerate state, or in a slave, or in a servile state. Meaning, like, when they see themselves and turn on TV, most of the time we see ourselves as pickpockets, thugs, gangsters, basketball players, picking cotton, and then, slaves and all that kind of stuff. We don't really see ourselves in, as a delegate, or as a steward, or as a king, as a princess, or whoever, somebody in high regard, right? So that's why these stories are so important, right? But anyways, Lord's will as always. This lesson was edifying. Let's give all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Makakwadash. Honors to the apostles and elders, great millstone, for teaching us His truth. Till next time, I say Shalom.